A woman found a USB drive on her doorstep. It contained only one video, footage from inside her apartment, recorded just hours ago. She never had a camera in her home. I arrived home late, exhausted after a grueling day at the city hospital. Working as an ER nurse meant unpredictable shifts and emotional fatigue that clung to me like a second skin. Tonight, after a 12-hour shift filled with chaos and a particularly difficult case involving a child, all I wanted was a scalding shower and the embrace of my bed. The hallway of my apartment building was quiet, save for the distant hum of someone's television and the perpetual drone of the air conditioning system. As I fumbled with my keys, the overhead light flickered, casting momentary shadows that danced across my door. I made a mental note to email the building manager about it, again. When the lock finally gave way, my foot caught on something small. I looked down to find a plain cardboard box on my welcome mat. No larger than my palm, it sat there innocuously, sealed with clear packing tape. No shipping label, no return address, not even my name. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. It was lightweight, almost empty feeling. In my 5 years living in this building on the quieter side of downtown Portland, I'd never received an unmarked package. The neighbors mostly kept to themselves, professionals like me who valued privacy and peace. Inside my apartment, I set my bag down and switched on the lights, still holding the mysterious box. The familiar comfort of my space, a modest one-bedroom with carefully selected furnishings and plants that somehow survived my erratic schedule, usually brought immediate relief. Tonight, however, an unfamiliar tension followed me in. Probably a mistake, I muttered to myself, though no one else was there to hear. My voice sounded unnaturally loud in the stillness. I grabbed a pair of scissors from the kitchen drawer and carefully cut through the tape. Inside, nestled in a bed of crumpled paper, was a black USB drive. No note, no explanation. I stared at it, turning the small device between my fingers. Who would leave this? And why not knock on my door or leave a message explaining what it contained? My laptop sat on the coffee table, where I'd left it that morning. I settled onto my couch and plugged in the drive, half expecting it to be empty, or perhaps containing files mistakenly delivered to the wrong apartment. The computer registered the device almost immediately. It contained a single file, a video, just over 3 minutes long. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the file. A voice in the back of my mind whispered caution, but curiosity prevailed. I clicked play. The footage that appeared on my screen sent ice water through my veins. It was my bedroom. My bed, with its navy duvet and the pile of decorative pillows I never quite knew what to do with. The cream-colored walls I'd painted myself 2 summers ago. The small reading lamp on my nightstand, casting a warm glow over the room. And there, in the bed, was me. Sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that I was being recorded. The timestamp in the corner read 2:17 a.m. Last night. I frantically scanned my room from where I sat. There was no camera, no device I could see that could have captured this footage. I'd never installed any security cameras, had never felt the need in this building. My heart hammered against my ribs as I returned my attention to the screen. I fast-forwarded through the video, watching myself shift in sleep, completely vulnerable and exposed. Then at 2:13 a.m., there was movement at the edge of the frame. A figure appeared in the doorway of my bedroom. Tall, motionless, just watching. I couldn't make out any features in the darkness, just a silhouette standing there. Watching me sleep. I slammed the laptop closed, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Someone had been in my apartment. Someone had filmed me in my most private space, in my most vulnerable state. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm, almost detached. I need to report an intruder, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Well, not current, someone was in my apartment last night. I have video evidence. They left it for me to find. The dispatcher took my information efficiently, assuring me that an officer would be dispatched to my location. I was told to wait outside my apartment if I felt unsafe remaining inside. I couldn't bring myself to leave. Instead, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and sat with my back against the front door, jumping at every creak and settling sound the building made. 40 minutes later, a knock at my door sent my heart into my throat. "Portland Police," a deep voice announced. I checked through the peephole before opening the door with the chain still latched, knife hidden behind my back. "Ms. Harmon?" "Detective Liam Clark." He held up a badge. "You reported an intrusion." I closed the door to remove the chain, then reopened it fully. Detective Clark entered with the careful assessment of someone used to walking into unknown situations. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped salt and pepper hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of experience rather than age. Though dressed in plain clothes, dark slacks and a button-up shirt with a shoulder holster visible beneath his jacket, there was no mistaking his profession. "Thank you for coming," I said, hating the tremble in my voice. "I know it must sound strange." "I've heard stranger," he replied, his expression neutral but not unkind. "You mentioned video evidence." I led him to my laptop, explaining how I'd found the USB drive and what it contained. "And you're certain you don't have any security cameras installed?" he asked, examining the USB drive with gloved hands before I played the video. "Positive. I've never owned one." He nodded, expression growing more serious as the footage played. I watched his eyes narrow at the figure in the doorway, his posture subtly shifting to alertness. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the laptop controls. I nodded, and he rewound to the moment the figure appeared. "Was your door locked last night?" "Always. I never forget. It was a habit ingrained from years of living alone in the city." "Any signs of forced entry when you came home today?" I shook my head. "None. And I would have noticed." Detective Clark frowned, rewinding and playing the same few seconds again. "The angle of this footage, it's as if the camera was positioned in the corner of your ceiling." We both looked up at the corner in question. Nothing but the meeting of two walls and ceiling, painted cream like the rest of the room. "Someone could have installed a small camera and then removed it," he suggested, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "But why leave me the footage?" I asked, the question that had been burning in my mind since I first watched the video. "If someone broke in, why would they want me to know about it?" Detective Clark didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rewound the video to the very end. In the final seconds, the figure in the doorway took a deliberate step toward the camera. "They knew they were being recorded," I whispered, hands clenched into fists to stop their shaking. Detective Clark's brow furrowed. "Maybe." He paused, then zoomed in on a detail I hadn't noticed, the digital clock on my nightstand. The time displayed was 11:17 p.m. I glanced at my phone. The current time was 11:15 p.m. "That's not possible," I said, my mouth suddenly dry. "This was recorded last night. I was asleep." Detective Clark straightened abruptly, his hand moving instinctively toward his holster. "This isn't a recording, Miss Harmon. This is a live feed." A wave of cold dread washed over me. "What?" "The clock in the video is 2 minutes ahead of your phone. This isn't footage from last night, it's happening now." The realization hit me like a physical blow. If this was a live feed, then somewhere in my apartment, a camera was currently recording my empty bedroom. And if the pattern from the video held. Detective Clark drew his weapon, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Stay behind me. Is there anyone else who has a key to your apartment?" "No," I breathed. "Just me and the building manager for emergencies." He nodded once, then began moving toward the bedroom, his steps deliberate and silent. That's when we heard it, a soft creaking sound from the darkened hallway leading to my bedroom. Detective Clark raised his weapon, positioning himself between me and the sound. "Portland Police," he called out. "Identify yourself." Silence followed, heavy and oppressive. Then, from the shadows, came the sound of a single footstep. The detective's finger moved to rest alongside the trigger guard. "Come out with your hands visible," he commanded. Another footstep. Closer. I pressed myself against the wall, wishing I could disappear into it. The knife I'd grabbed earlier now seemed woefully inadequate, a child's defense against a very adult threat. A figure began to emerge from the darkness of the hallway. Tall, just like in the video. One more step and Detective Clark's warning was cut short as the lights in the apartment suddenly went out, plunging us into complete darkness. I heard Detective Clark curse under his breath, followed by the sound of him moving. "Ms. Harmon, stay exactly where you are," he instructed, his voice tense but controlled. The beam of a flashlight cut through the darkness, the detective's tactical light attached to his weapon. Its harsh glow swept across the space where we'd seen the figure. There was no one there. "Check the breaker," Detective Clark said, keeping his light trained on the hallway. I fumbled my way to the kitchen, using my phone's flashlight to locate the electrical panel near the refrigerator. When I opened it, I found all the breakers still in the on position. "Breakers are fine," I called out, keeping my voice low. "It must be the whole building." As if in response to my statement, we heard doors opening in the hallway outside my apartment, followed by the confused voices of neighbors. Detective Clark moved to my door, checking the peephole before opening it slightly. The hallway beyond was dark as well, illuminated only by the emergency exit signs and neighbors' cell phone lights. "Power's out in the whole building," he confirmed, closing and locking the door again. He turned to me, his expression grave in the harsh light of his tactical flashlight. "I'm calling for backup." He reached for his radio, but before he could make the call, my laptop screen suddenly illuminated, casting an eerie blue glow throughout the living room. The video was still playing. Despite the power outage, despite the laptop having been closed, the footage continued to stream. On the screen, my bedroom was now illuminated by what appeared to be the same flashlight Detective Clark was holding. The beam swept across the room, exactly mimicking his movements in real time. But there was something else in the frame now, a shadow moving independently of the light, creeping along the wall toward the camera. "That's not possible," Detective Clark muttered, his experienced composure finally cracking. "The laptop shouldn't be running without power." I stared at the screen, transfixed by the shadow moving across my bedroom wall. It grew larger, stretched taller, approaching the camera's position. Then, without warning, the laptop screen went black, plunging us back into darkness broken only by our flashlights. For several long seconds, neither of us moved. The only sound was our breathing and the distant voices of confused neighbors in the hallway. Then, my phone chimed with an incoming message. With trembling fingers, I checked the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. "Did you like my gift? I'll be seeing you again soon." Detective Clark was immediately at my side, reading the message over my shoulder. "We need to get you out of here," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Now." As he ushered me toward the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that somehow the figure knew exactly what we were doing, where we were going. Just as we reached the door, my phone chimed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You can leave, Emily. But I'll still be with you." Look closely at Detective Clark's watch. I froze, turning slowly to look at the detective's wrist. His watch face glowed faintly in the darkness. The time displayed was 11:17 p.m. 2 minutes ahead of my phone. Just like the clock in the video. Detective Clark followed my gaze, his expression hardening as he checked his watch against my phone. The implication hung between us, unspoken but undeniable. "Let's go," he said finally, his voice tight. "We'll figure this out somewhere else." As we stepped into the darkened hallway, joining my equally confused neighbors who were gathering with flashlights and candles, I couldn't help but wonder, who was watching us? And more importantly, how were they always 2 minutes ahead? The questions lingered, unanswered, as Detective Clark guided me through the darkness, away from my apartment, but not, I feared, away from the eyes that had found their way into my most private spaces. Eyes that somehow saw not just where I had been, but where I would be. 2 minutes before I even got there.